Oh, there we go. Welcome to episode 9, Bet Parks Presents Stick to Hockey Live. It's Jason Myrtetus, Anthony DiMarco from the fourth period, north of the border, going to join us very shortly in just a second. We got a ton to talk about, obviously. What's been a weird week? What's been a weird last night? We'll talk about that and much more. Let me tell you about Bet Parks, because now's a great time to get in on the action. Bet Parks, the best casino and sportsbook app. It's fantastic. Make sure you download it. You're going to get in on the instant hockey boost coming up on Wednesday. Both of them so far have hit. The stick to hockey boosts have hit on the first two occasions. Flyers covered the 1.5 at plus 250 on the boost against Florida. And then the first game, score 4 goals or more and win, got you plus 210 against New Jersey. So the boosts are on fire right now. So get on the Bet Parks app. You can bet all the different sports, including obviously the finals of Major League Baseball. I can't say what it's actually called because they freak out about that. You can bet football. You can bet hockey. You can bet college football. All of it's there for you at your disposal. Player performances, same game parlays, live in-game betting, you name it. Anything you can imagine. You can bet Formula One coming up this week in Mexico. Just got it done in Austin, Texas. So get the Bet Parks app now. You're going to love it. It's fantastic, and you're going to get in on all the great action. You do need to be over 21 and present in Pennsylvania or New Jersey. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. And let me tell you about Conkerville Subaru. I hope you visited the dealership this weekend. It was beautiful out. Great time to look at the beautiful cars down there at Conkerville Subaru. And, you know, it's a great dealership. And they have the slogan, Conkerville Cares. Now, why do they have that? Well, because they actually do care. They do care about their customers and their community. They were the first Subaru Nation Love Promise Dealer of the Year winner back in 2015. They also have been supporting the Nemours Children's Hospital of Delaware for 8 years. They've adopted 15 classrooms at Marcus Hook Elementary School, allowing teachers to pick $500 in classroom supplies. And they continue their donation of thousands of coats to La Comunidad España in Kennett Square over the last 10 years, and that continues to this day. Russ Joy taught me how to say that properly on Friday's episode. So visit their beautiful showroom on Route 202 in Glen Mills and check out the certified pre-owned inventory and a list of the great incoming Subaru vehicles. It is Conkerville Subaru, more than a dealership. It's also a great service department where you get a free car wash with every visit. Do yourself a favor. Visit ConkervilleSubaru.com online and then go to check out that showroom on Route 202 in Glen Mills. And remember, Conkerville cares. Let's get to the man right now. He is north of the border. He is from the fourthperiod.com, and he joins us right now. It is Anthony DiMarco. What's going on, Ant?
Not much, man. We got the first dub last night, eh?
Yeah, we got the first shot over the bow last night, didn't we?
So you guys down in Philly, you got it at all ends of the spectrum. You got the complete dud with the Flyers, and then you got the massive Phillies punching their ticket to the Nope, can't say it. Punching their ticket to...
You can say it now. Just can't say it in an ad read.
Okay, so they punched their ticket to the World Series. So, I mean, you guys must be going ballistic down there.
You know, it was cool because I was inside the East Food Hall. That's where we do pregame, intermission, and postgame from, along with Brian Smith. And they opened it up early, and there's, you know, tons of TVs there. They had $5 beers, $1 hot dogs, and the place was jammed, right? And at the end of the game was around, like, the top of the ninth inning was basically 6 to like 6:10. And we were set to go on at 6:30. And I live streamed it. So if you want to see the reaction in there, I just turned on my live stream and turned my camera around and let people see what was happening. And when they got, I mean, every pitch was crazy, but when they got the final out, that fly ball, the place went nuts. I mean, beers were flying. Everybody was going bananas. Everybody was out on Broad Street last night, Frankfurt and Cottman, climbing the greased poles. It was on like you wouldn't believe, man. People just going ballistic. So congrats to the Phils. They got tough out here in the World Series, no doubt.
Yeah, well, you got the cheaters that they're going up against now, but no, obviously, yeah, the Astros. It looked like they're really on a warpath right now, and especially with it's just crazy. Like I never really thought that the Phillies had a shot this year to go this deep. Like, obviously, like up here in Toronto, in Canada, a lot of people thought the Jays were going to be really good. Obviously, people were talking like the Dodgers were like the best team people had seen in decades. But I mean, I'm pulling for them. You know, I am a Blue Jays guy, full transparency. I like to beat the Canadian drum, but I always have time for the Phillies for sure.
Yeah, and you know, normal year before this year, they wouldn't even have made the playoffs. But the expanded playoff format got them in. A lot of people are bitching about that. But that's what's good. You want that variable of teams. When they get into the playoffs, can go on a magical run. It's kind of like hockey. Like in basketball, you don't get that so much. You get that in the NHL. An 8 seed can win the cup and has won the cup.
Yeah.
That's the amazing thing. What LA was an 8 seed and 12, right?
Yeah, LA was an 18-12. The Flyers were a 7
seed.
seed
Yeah.
when they went to 2010. I know Bettman doesn't want to do anything with it, but I thought for a while that like maybe expanding the NHL playoffs would be good. Maybe you add 2 more teams on either division or either conference, and then you kind of would have 7 play 10 and 8 play 9. And then they get into the actual playoff round, even if it's just like a one-off or a best 2 out of 3. Like I think that would be, yeah, it's basically free revenue, right? And you see the NBA, which a lot of their playoff format pretty much mirrors identically what the NHL does, and they've now gone into that. And I don't know why Bettman would be so against it. Maybe the players union would have to have something to say about that because you would be playing more games if you are in one of those teams. But I think it would just be free revenue. And like you said, it adds that extra variable. And let's be honest, like what's the real difference between a team that finished 7th as opposed to 10th? Maybe last year in the Eastern Conference, it wasn't like that. But in normal years, 7 to 10, it's all about the same caliber of teams.
Yeah, I mean, right now, half the league makes the playoffs, half does not. 16 in, 16 out. I'm not in favor of expanding it. I'd be in favor because of the revenue and rising cap and all that stuff, but I'm not in favor of because a team that goes on a tear in a regular season, finishes at the top, they get a team that just played their way in and has some confidence and they're playing loose. Because in hockey, like a 10 seed has 2 games over 500, they get in and they knock out a top seed in the best of 7. That's what I don't like. That it doesn't reward those top teams for 82 games of excellence. It puts them in peril immediately, and I don't love that. Then you go, well, they're the top team; they should beat that team. But it's hockey. That's not a hot goalie, and it's all over. You're done. You're out. Like Tampa. The one year Tampa has the most points, 128, and they get swept by Columbus. So I'm actually not in favor of it, but I get it from
not even at all.
No, I just don't. Look, if you didn't get it done in 82, and half the league makes it in half. I like the thing that half of it makes it and half doesn't. The old saying, it used to be, like in the early 90s and all the way about 2000 was, the whole league makes the playoffs. And they basically did because you had 16 of like 22 teams. But now it's harder to make the playoffs. So I like that. I think that's a good thing.
I just feel like in North American sports, like we are so like playoff centric here. Like that's what people really live and die for.
Yeah, it's the best.
It's amazing. And I think it was ASF who said it on your podcast on Friday, where he said, short of the NHL playoffs, there's nothing like playoff baseball or overtime NHL playoffs. And playoff baseball, like it could go, it's so crazy that baseball can go from like the most mundane spectator sport to like the most electric in the playoffs. And I guess like my case for advocating for it, the extended playoffs in the NHL, is because it would give you like one more layer of that type of feeling in hockey. But I do understand that you want to prioritize the regular season, especially when you have 82 games. Like it's an 82 game marathon. So I do understand like you don't want to reward a team who barely scraped in and then got hot for like a couple weeks. So I do get it from that standpoint as well.
If you want to get rid of some of regular season games, I could entertain it.
Yeah, well,
but they'll never do that. That's game.
If you could trim the regular season by like 10 games type of thing, I think that would go a long way.
Go 20. Yeah, 62
you
games.
Go perfect. Really?
Yeah. And then add a round of the playoffs. Yeah, I would do that. And then, your season would be the same length. You'd play less back-to-backs. There wouldn't be as much of a grind. Because back-to-backs aren't great for anyone because the product suffers. Because you got super
like that
guys.
Fucking game last night.
Yeah, I mean, both teams run a back-to-back there. I mean, it was just ugly. But, I would, and then I would have a mid-season instead of an all-star game, like some sort of best-on-best country, World Cup type thing, like soccer does, like the EPL.
Well, I know that people had kind of like tossed it around, like this isn't at all like going to happen. But a lot of, let's say, pundits have said like, why don't you just have like a best of 7 summit series between Canada and the US? Because let's be real now. Like, I know that there's tentative plans to have the World Cup of Hockey in 2024, I think February 2024. But it's like, you look at the countries here, like it's basically Canada or the US. Like, I don't think any other country.
Well,
I mean,
Sweden
I guess
can get in that mix, or Finland sometimes, and you never know.
like Russia, would they even be involved? Like, obviously they're kind of a threat, but internationally, aside from when NHLers haven't gone to the Olympics, like Russia hasn't been a force in international hockey when NHLers are there in quite some time.
Yeah, you're right. No, it would be. I mean, maybe you get like the biggest four, and then you come up with a team with like the Swiss players and I mean, the Czech Republic could field a good team.
Yeah.
And I mean, but some of those smaller countries, the Belarusians, like Oscar Bartolis, who's a Belarusian. So, all right, we've wasted enough time on that. That was fun though. Good debate. But let's get to what happened last night. And yeah, they lose 3-0 to a 1-6 team. It just shows you in the NHL, any team can beat any team. I mean, they went in. They beat the Flyers last night. Flyers aren't a great team, but they also went into the Garden and beat the Rangers in overtime a couple nights before on Thursday. Did San Jose to get their first win. But the big story, obviously, is the fact that Kevin Hayes and Travis Konechny did not play a shift in the third period, coupled with the fact that JVR only played 3 minutes in the game because he got hurt. So John Tortorella decided to, find a hill to stand on, and he stood on it the entire period and played with 3 lines. And we didn't see either of those guys. It's highly embarrassing for veteran players like that to be stapled to the bench. What did you think about it?
Right in the middle of the bench.
yeah. What did you think about what took place last night?
Like, it kind of surprised me because there weren't any overtly bad plays that Hayes or Konechny had, but at the same time, neither of them were doing anything to separate themselves from the pack.
Konechny and I think lost on the first goal.
Yeah, and Konechny, I think more times than not, he's been one of their better offensive guys, but I don't think either of these two guys have been particularly great defensively. Like, aside from Lexell and Owen Tippett, who have really not had a large sample size. Lexell played 1 game, Tippett's played 1 period. The only forward in terms of expected goals against per 60 that's worse than Hayes and Konechny is Joel Farabee. And I think that Tortorella rightfully holds Konechny and Hayes to the higher standard. They're the 2 best forwards on the team with Sean Couturier on the shelf right now. And those 2 guys weren't playing well enough to really drag this team out of the pack, or drag this team into the fight or lead this team on a tough back-to-back. And I think that going into the third period, Tortorella decided that sending this message to the leaders of this team offensively was more important than getting the win. Like, let's be honest here. Like, when you have Deslauriers and McEwen out there on a power play, is that something that's going to help you win a game as opposed to Konechny and Hayes? No, because 85% of Konechny and Hayes, or even lower than that, is more effective offensively than a McEwen or a Deslauriers. But you sent a message here that you're holding these 2 guys to a higher standard, and Tortorella has been very consistent with that, specifically with Kevin Hayes since the beginning of training camp. His first media availability back in June, he singled out Hayes in particular, that he wanted more from this guy. Yeah. So I think he really just said, you guys don't want to play to the capability that you guys are capable of, well, then you're not going to play.
Yeah. That's when I noticed it, when they were on that power play with about 35 seconds left in the power play. I saw Lucas Sedlak on the ice. And I'm thinking, wait, why is Hayes not out there now? And I go, well, maybe it's the end of the power play. There's about 14 minutes left in the period in the third, or 13 minutes. And I go, I haven't seen Hayes the whole period here. And we started talking at the press box. We're like, no, I haven't either. He hasn't seen a shift. And then we're like, well, wait a minute. We haven't seen Konechny either. And we're kind of going like, what's going on here? But they're both on the bench. And it was very odd. And when I saw Sedlak out there, I'm going, okay, there's something going on. He's sending a message here, but we'll see if he sticks to it through the whole period. And he did. He said in postgame, the first question was about message to those 2 guys. And he said, I'm going to keep the message to those 2 guys basically private. But it was basically public. And when you do it to those two guys, look, you just said it, Ant. Hayes is leading the team in points. He's got a goal and 7 assists, 8 points in now 6 games. Konechny, 4 goals, 2 assists, 6 points. He's the second highest point getter on the team, and you're down a forward. That is going to resonate through that locker room. It's not just about Hayes and Konechny. Everybody sees what happened there last night and knows nobody is off limits at any time, any circumstance.
And look, I also think a part of this has to do with some of the other guys lower in the lineup playing good process hockey, if you will. Again, relative to what these players are. Like, I think McEwen has really stepped up his game in recent weeks. I think he's a guy who's benefited from Tortorella. Sedlak, very small sample size, but I think he's looked okay. Like, Morgan Frost has been responsible at all ends of the ice. Lazinski has seemed to kind of start turning his game around after being somewhat called out by Torts last week. So I think it was
10 minutes and change last night on a shortened bench, though. Anyway, I think he's going down this week.
Well, like, I guess it depends. Well, I would assume, because I think Tippett is on the mend here. Atkinson probably on the mend as well. Couturier, I don't think he's going to be back any time in the immediate future.
Going to be back Thursday.
Yeah, even Risto, I think, if all goes well, will be back this week. But who knows? Don't hold your breath on that. But I think that, Lazinski, he's been kind of inconsistent in terms of where he's been playing as well, right? They've tried him 4C, they've tried him third line right wing, fourth line right wing. I think last night he was mostly playing with with Noah Cates and Farabee, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. And then I just think that Tortorella wants consistency from these guys and playing to your respective roles. Obviously, a lot of people are upset with how much he was deploying, let's say, guys like Deloria and McEwen. And obviously, if you're trying to win a hockey game, you never want to see those two guys or Sedlak playing on a power play. But I think that line was playing the way that, like, you want them to play. And in terms of where they are at as players, they were playing to their capability. I think that even their underlying numbers, they haven't been bad defensively. Obviously, they're not going to do much in the way of generating scoring opportunities, and it was against the San Jose Sharks. But I think last night was all about Torts saying, just like, I want you to play to your top level. And everyone was mostly doing that, except for the two best forwards on the team in Hayes and Konechny.
And those are the two guys that you need to lead the way. I talked about this on, I think it was Sunday's Flyers Daily. I said, if you want to know what a coach thinks about a player, don't listen to his words, look at his usage. Because on Saturday, Konechny played the most out of any forward, over 23 minutes in that game, shorthanded power play, 23 minutes. I don't know that he's ever seen 23 minutes of ice time in a regulation game, but that's what he saw. So Tortorella's trusting him, he's liking it. And then he came back the next day and he obviously did not like what he sees. And it is a game-by-game thing with Torts. It's not just, hey, I trusted you yesterday. Even though you're not doing those things, I'm going to give you the minutes today. It's not going to be that way. This is what we talk about when we say Torts is, accountability. Like we say, it's just one of those words in sports. But Torts, it's a religion. And accountability never takes a day off. And accountability doesn't transfer from day to day. It's got to be there every day, every period, every performance.
And that's the thing. You want a consistency, right? You want, and I know this has been like a buzzword, you want a standard that's there each and every night. And Konechny, who has been very good, and Hayes, who has been mostly good. I haven't really liked them defensively at times. Like, I think that especially Konechny gets lost a lot. But if you're producing at the other end of the ice, then hey, more power to you. But last night was a game where neither of those guys were playing to where they need to be. And I think this was Tortorella saying, like, hey, just because you were good last night or on Thursday or last Monday, it doesn't give you a free pass to mail it in tonight. And that's not to say that you have to be banging in a goal or two every single game, but you can't be a passenger when you're that type of player on teams, especially a team like the Flyers that don't have a lot of scoring depth. They don't have the ability to see guys like Hayes and Konechny, again, not take nights off, because I don't think they were overtly bad. Look, Konechny obviously got lost on the second goal, was on the ice for both goals against. But like, it wasn't like these guys were just completely mailing it in and complete non-factors. But in terms of what they mean to this team, they weren't playing where they needed to be. And that's just what it is. And Torts is, and we've seen this numerous times over the last few years, where we would always say, like, their best players are not their best players right now. They would go through lulls. But, you know, in the case of AV, what he would do, when, let's say in the bubble, he would put Giroux, Couture, and Voracek together and say, well, they got to figure it out together. And Tortorella is taking the approach of saying, like, look, if you guys don't want to play to your capabilities, you're just not going to play, period.
Yeah, have a seat. And that, I mean, it's highly embarrassing. I thought TK handled it pretty well post-game. Hayes, I thought, was obviously seemed a little more salty about it. But we all knew this was coming from the minute Torts was hired, because you mentioned it. He used Kevin Hayes. He said, I think there's more there. I'm going to have to push him to get to a place where he's never been and hold him to a very high standard. Every player is held to a standard, but the result of the standard varies. Like Zach McEwen is held to the standard of the peak of what he thinks he can do. Hayes is held to the peak of what he thinks he can do. And even though Hayes hasn't really maybe even reached the peak of what Torts thinks he can do, he's going to hold him to that standard until he reaches it. And if not, there's going to be hard lessons along the way. I'm just wondering, how this is going to kind of ruminate today on an off day for them when they return tomorrow, Tuesday, and then Wednesday practices, and then back Thursday against a good Florida team that they, played pretty tight on the road. So, how they handle this going forward. I mean, I think guys like McEwen, when they saw that they were going out basically every other shift in that third period, got up on it even more, because they're going, I'm getting more ice time than usual. I can show more. Like McEwen, he went out for not even a 30-second shift, and he just spilled it. I mean, spilled it. The whole forecheck got in, and the puck went out, and he was, hustling his bag off. And, he wouldn't have been able to stay out there another 5 seconds, because he worked so hard in the 35 seconds he was out there, that it was like, oh my God, like, this guy senses an opportunity, and that's how everybody's got to feel. But everybody's got to, jump up to the standard that Torts is going to talk about. Torts did talk about, though, too, Ant. I'm not going to discount the start of the season, the last week and change. They played some pretty damn good hockey, some Brazilian hockey. They are 4-2 after 6 games. If you would have asked me before the season start, you want to sign a contract for 4-2 after the first 6, given that schedule and all the circumstances, I would have signed that contract in a heartbeat.
Yeah, and for sure, because this was the only game where they really just did not look good. It was like, I was talking to someone earlier today with the Flyers, and he told me it's just like, it was the ultimate trap game. You're coming back from a road trip on the second of a back-to-back against a really, really bad team on a Sunday night. That's the definition of a trap.
Had the line at -125.
Exactly. Like, this wasn't like, we saw it coming, and it was just a bad hockey game. It wasn't interesting. It wasn't fun to watch. Like, San Jose's a garbage team, and it just is what it is. And like, just to talk about like a Zach McEwen, like, look, we started the year. He went to the AHL. We talked about how he was probably a fringe AHLer at best. And look, he comes up his first game, doesn't look great, takes 2 bad penalties, but I got to say, I really like seeing how McEwen has upped his game, because even the underlying numbers, like, he's not really been a guy who is a liability out there. I think Sedlak has been good in that 4C role. I think Delorier has done his job. I really just think that these are guys that deeper down in the lineup have played their role. And look, we know that this team isn't good enough all in all. We get that. We know that they lack the high-end talent. But when you see guys lower down in the lineup playing to their capabilities, and then you see the top guys not kind of like leading the way, it makes sense why Tortorella wanted to really make an example, even though you have a 4-2 record, because we know, look, Russ Joyce said it last week, winning isn't the priority this year. And if that was ever in question before, I think after last night, we know, because Tortorella basically sacrificed trying to win a game by icing his best players by just sending a message.
Yeah. The funny thing is McEwen was the second highest forward in the game against Nashville in expected goals for. The only
Yep.
guy higher than him was Scott Lawton in that game.
Yep.
And he made a real nice play on his goal too, McEwen. He jumps around the Nashville player to get inside positioning for that rebound. Like that's a little savvy play. You
Yep.
know, the defender's job is to be on the right side of the puck, between the net and the attacking player. And he fell asleep a little bit, and McEwen was able to jump around him. CMAC messages in and says, "I hate how Wade Allison is being used. I've tried to make sense of it. This team needs offense, yet he's getting very little opportunity to score goals. He's on the forecheck and standing at the net." Well, that's what Wade Allison is. He's a straight line forechecker and then go to the net. He's also got a great release, so he can be a trigger guy. I think Allison's been decent. He hasn't flashed a ton for me. The fact that he's stayed healthy, I think, is the biggest asset so far for Wade Allison.
Yeah.
But I think he's one of the team's better forecheckers, straight line forecheckers. So I don't look. I think Noah Cates has kind of hit a little bit of a wall here early too.
Yeah, especially playing center.
Yeah, and I think it's just not natural for him to play center.
Yeah,
he's not good at faceoffs. He just hasn't done it a lot. The team is horrific in the dot, but Noah Cates, I think will be better served on the wing at some point, but they need to get more centers.
Yeah, in terms of Wade Allison, I mean, he, aside from Farabee and Noah Cates, he's played the most minutes at 5-on-5 of any forward. Yeah. I think offensively, he generates a lot of shots per six. Well, a lot, relatively speaking. Aside from Sedlak, he generates the most shots per 60. I just think that maybe Allison is a guy who's still trying to find a way how to score goals consistently in the NHL, because we know he has a good shot. We know that in the past he's kind of played as a trigger position on the power play, but we also know that he has that ability to be that net front guy around the net. And look, I think it's a work in progress. Obviously, the lines have juggled a lot here. And I think a lot of the time he's been playing with a guy, let's say like Morgan Frost, who I think, not defensively, I think he's been very sound defensively at all areas, but I think consistently being able to generate and be involved in the play offensively for Frost is still a work in progress. JJ mentioned it on the broadcast last night. And then other times he's played with Noah Cates, who we just said is kind of struggling right now, trying to learn that center ice position, which is nothing against him. Like, the fact that he's been able to perform adequately speaks a lot. And he's been getting a lot of usage at 5-on-5 as well from Tortorella. Yeah. But I mean, in terms of usage, if we want to just kind of like hang on that wording from CMAC, it's like he's been getting a lot of opportunities. It's just I think it's Allison trying to find his way in the NHL and how he's going to be able to be effective every night and actually score goals, because I think he does generate arguably more chances than anyone offensively right now, just because of how hard he goes in on the forecheck.
Yeah, and we also have to remember that Wade didn't play much last year at all. He's playing his way back into his peak performance abilities, and that is going to take a little time. He came in tremendous shape. He's a hard worker and all of those things. So it may take a little time for him, and it doesn't help that there's not a lot of offensive weapons on this team. So you can keep certain guys a little bit more. Eric messages in and says, should they try a goalie who had, I'm not sure what he's trying to say initially, but should they try a goalie who had a good preseason, forget his name, because backup hasn't won yet? He's talking about Urson. It's not entirely his fault. And Sandstrom obviously played 2 preseason games. In the third, he made 2 saves and then went out with a groin injury. And Urson, is a guy that played really well in the preseason, but needs to play. Like, the reason why Urson's not, he needs to play. He didn't really play last year at all. And if you're the backup up here, like, Sandstrom's gotten 2 games, both in back-to-back situations. You're not going to get a lot of games. Urson needs to play games.
Yeah.
He's 2 years younger than Sandstrom.
And he's waiver exempt.
And yeah, exactly. That's the other thing. He's waiver. I don't know that Sandstrom will get picked up anyway, but you never know. And then, you look at Sandstrom and his performance in both games. He's made some really good saves, some big saves at big times, but there's been 3 goals now that I haven't liked. In the Florida game, I think it was the second Uyghur goal. He was down, didn't get back up out of his RVH on that left side, and and Uyghur was able to beat high glove. And then obviously the knuckleball, the fourth goal against Florida, that kind of just dipped under his glove. And then last night, I didn't like I think it was the second goal of the game, where again, he's in that RVH on his glove hand side. Puck comes out for that one-time shot from Eric. It was the first goal, Eric Carlson, and he beats him high blocker. He's got to regain his edges on that. When the puck, it's fine to be in that RVH when the play is still in a dead angle. A dead angle is some goalie coaches have different ranges for it. Basically, it's from the angle from the far post to the hash mark is a dead angle. And it's going to take an absolutely perfect shot to beat the goalie if he's in RVH and he's got the whole lower third covered. But when the puck goes higher than that, you got to regain your edges to give you more options. Both of them beat him high because when you're down, you can only go up so far. If he's standing, that's an easy blocker save. Boom, right off.
Yeah. No, I like Sandstrom because I think a lot of the natural tools are there, like the raw talent is there. But I think that he is still trying to figure out how to be consistent, and there are things that he has to work on. Like I find a lot of times, like we saw it last night with the Carlson thing. Maybe it's not like a terrible goal per se, but still one that you maybe want to see him have. And I do think that this is a situation where, like you said, Urson has a lot more runway left with his organization than Sandstrom does. Like, I think Sandstrom, we talked about before the season started, I don't think he had anything to prove left in the AHL. That's why I think it would have been a very interesting situation had Fedotov been able to come and play for the Philadelphia Flyers, because I think that he would have handedly taken the reins away from Sandstrom. But I think Sandstrom is a guy that, maybe it's just me, obviously you're way more knowledgeable at the goaltending position than I am, but I think that because of the raw talent and his just raw, like, I guess, ability, I think that he has a future in the NHL. I think it's just about him finding that way to be consistent and not giving up the bad goal each and every game.
And realizing that the NHL, if you don't regain your edges in that spot, those guys, when they shoot, will beat you.
Yeah.
In the AHL, maybe you get away with that. They all shoot hard. They all shoot the same velocity for the most part, right?
Yeah.
In the AHL, you have guys that can bomb it just as much as guys, but it's the precision and the ability to pick a spot in the NHL that they will. The term I always use for goaltenders when they get to the NHL level is it's incredibly unforgiving.
Yeah.
Anything you leave them, they exploit. In other leagues, if you leave them something, you may get away with it. Not at the NHL level. You're not going to get away with it. It just doesn't happen. Those guys are so good. I mean, the way they shoot the puck is just absolutely insane. How they change, the release points, pulling the string, bringing it into their body, deception. It is the ultimate cat and mouse game between the goaltenders and the triggers. It's just the way it is. You think if they send Lazinski down, who would be the sensible call-up? I know everybody's going to say Forster. I had Chuck on Flyers Daily, and he really pushed back on calling Forster up here early. And I don't know that you take Lazinski out and you pull Forster up. It also obviously depends on if Tippett comes back, the status of Atkinson and those things. But if Tanner goes down, does it make sense maybe to pull up Denoye?
I think he's been good. The one thing is that I would like to see Denoye because he would give you another guy to play center and probably push Noah Cates to the wing. Look, we've seen Jackson.
He's going to be in that role when he gets to the NHL. Like, he's going to be a checking player,
That's it. Like, I don't think he's going to be anything more than a 3C. But I think if he develops into a good 3C, that's a win for Denoye. And look, Jackson Cates, he has no future with his team. Love the guy, but it's not working for him. I think that now you found your stable fourth line. Maybe after last night, the top line, but your stable fourth line with Delorier, Sedlak, and Zach McEwen. I think that's like a good, stable fourth line. But then, obviously, like you said, it depends a lot what happens when Tippett comes back, when Atkinson comes back. I guess that would maybe halt them from calling up a Denoye, because you don't want to call him up and then him play a game or two and then send him back down. Yeah. I think that if you bring up Denoye, you want to give him at least a 3, 4, 5 game sample size. But I would like to see it because I really want to see Noah Cates on the wing, because I think you're just ripping away his best ability on the forecheck to get in there. And again, this is not to say that Cates has been horrible at center. I think we've seen enough of it to see that. And look, maybe he could develop into a solid center. But the thing is that long term, I don't think that they need Noah Cates to be a center. Like, they're also very thin at left wing. Like, if you look at their natural left wingers in their system, you have Cates and you have Farabee. After that, there's not a whole lot of everything. Right wings, they have it from here until 2023. And centerman, you look at Denwaya, you have Cutter Gauthier, Morgan Frost, and whether or not he sticks around long term. You have Couturier locked up. I don't think that it's imperative that you keep Noah Cates at center. I get trying to figure out to see if he could play that, but I think we've seen a decent enough of a sample size now to just suggest that maybe get him back on the left wing if possible.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's just going to be a more effective player there that can give you all zone, predictability. The environment has been better, I think, for the goaltenders. One thing is, even with Sandstrom's 2 games and Hart's 4 games, where he's got a .949 save percentage, backdoor has been covered. He hasn't had to worry about backdoor.
Yeah.
Cross east-west plays have been very limited, and goalies hate those. And he has had some predictability in environment, and I think that's why you see the save percentage where it is as well. So Eric also messaged in and said, should they bring up York to provide some offensive chances because they need offense thanks on the goalie response? I don't think that's in the cards right now. He's not providing offense right now. I talked to somebody and, they said that he's a chill guy, right? Very chill. And what I was told is basically he's too chill on the ice. He needs more urgency, needs to push play, needs to drive offense more. Too safe, basically, is the way that he has played. And with his skill set, and he can't be too safe. They need him to push play and to be able to drive offense. I don't think he's close to getting called up. Plus, I think that Zamula's been fine.
Like, honestly, all 6 of the defensemen, I really haven't had an issue with. Like, look,
Braun.
Yeah, Braun's been fine. Like, obviously, they've been able to limit his minutes, specifically at 5-on-5. I like, for the most part, like, look, there's been some hiccups, but I think Provorov and D'Angelo have mixed very well together. I think Sanheim, it's been, like, mostly good, but, like, I think that in the past few games, maybe he struggled a bit more. But again, like, it's nothing major here. Like, you really have to nitpick to go out of your way, and especially given to how much the Flyers are really defending. I have nothing bad to say about them. And like you said, like, if he's going to come up, he's going to replace Igor Zamula. And in my head, I'm saying, like, Zamula's done nothing here to really warrant that. Like, I just don't see a need for Cam York to come up yet. And even in terms of the offense, like, do they need more offense from their blue line? Like, you have Tony D'Angelo, you have Ivan Provorov, who have been their best offensive guys. Zamula's gotten looks on the power play.
Each have 5 points, by the way.
They've done their job. Like, Sanheim, I don't think he's registered a point yet this season. No. But again, like, he hasn't been overtly bad. I think he can play better. Once Ristolainen gets back, I'm sure he will play a bit better. But yeah, I don't see that it's imperative to call up York anytime soon. You want him to get his game to a certain level, and I just don't see the Flyers really needing him right now.
Not for nothing, but Sealer's been decent too.
I think he's the only one. I don't know if it's held true, but for a bit he was the only defenseman with an positive on-ice expected goal differential.
Yeah, he's jumped up in the play a few times, and he's got the goal that go into the net, and I think he's actually played well. No, he's not part of the future long term and all that. We know what Nick Sealer is. I mean, the fact that you're 4-2, and on your D you're playing Justin Braun on the right side of your second pair at this point in his career. It's no slight against Braun. And you're playing Nick Sealer on your third pair. You're playing basically a rookie in Igor Zamula on your third pair. You have D'Angelo and Provorov together, who have hit the ground running, and we were really concerned about their chemistry. And then you're missing Atkinson, Couturier, Tippett for pretty much the whole thing.
Ristolainen.
And Ristolainen. I mean, think about that, Ant. You're 4-2, despite you're probably, 2 of your top 4 at a minimum best forwards in Couturier and Atkinson, and you're 4-2, and they've scored for the most part too, with the exception of last night.
They've played like, look, with the exception of yesterday, they've played like well, let's say, relatively speaking. Obviously, the territorial battle and all that, the chances for and against wouldn't suggest that they're going to be able to be 4-2 over the course of an 82 game schedule. But I'm just saying that, like, with the exception of last night, they've played well, and especially the defense, like the forwards, we can pinpoint things like Lazinski not being consistent, Hayes and Konechny obviously last night. But I mean, defensively, specifically talking about Cam York here, I just don't see a need for it. Like, even when Ristolainen is ready to go, like, obviously you're going to want him to see him come in. You would assume Nick Seeler comes out of the lineup, but like, I don't think there's even a rush to get this guy back in the lineup, because for the most part, they've been good. Now, I do think that if you want to like break it down, that in their respective roles, Sanheim and Braun have been the worst pairing. Like, even if you look at the Corsi and the expected goals and all that, I find that they don't have the puck a lot and they often find themselves defending. But again, like, they haven't been overtly bad. They've just been probably the worst of the bunch. And this is, look, relatively speaking, obviously Sanheim and Braun are a better pair than Zamula and Seeler. But I just don't think that there's any real rush to break up the way this defense is working right now.
Yeah. What have we thought about that first pair? We mentioned that D'Angelo and Provorov each have 5 points in 6 games. D'Angelo's made, other than the last 2 games, made a difference really on that power play as well. But those two, I don't think have been on the ice for a 5-on-5 goal yet. And
I think they let in one against
last night, or was
I think in Nashville or
that was
Florida.
A 6-on-4 goal, the Nashville one. Did they
I think it was
maybe
Florida.
In Florida?
Yeah.
But I mean, overall, one of the things we were worried about was that on-ice chemistry. And I'm told these two are getting along like gangbusters too off the ice.
Okay.
I mean, it's the difference in personality oftentimes, is the good thing for a relationship. But I think these two on the ice, have really had supported each other in good position, in the face of pressure or a forecheck, but in the right spots. They seem to communicate well, and they seem to be developing that instinct of where the other guy is going to be.
No, it's been great. And look, I think that the way that Brad Shaw has deployed his defense has really helped here, because you've seen those two get the most offensive zone start percentage, and you've really leaned on Sanheim and Braun to take those D zone minutes. So it's good on the deployment as well. And this isn't to say that Sanheim and Braun haven't done their job. They've taken a lot of those hard minutes off. But like, when you see Provorov and D'Angelo both playing north of 17 minutes a night at 5-on-5, obviously D'Angelo always finishing with more ice time because he gets those power play minutes, and just more or less them really feeding off of each other. And look, like I said, I was speaking with someone with the Flyers earlier today, and he told me, like, D'Angelo has brought a dynamic that is the one maybe wart in Provy's game. And Provy, I think, defends really well, and I think he could skate the puck out of danger more times than not. But when he's forced to make a quick decision with the puck, specifically on exits, that's where he kind of struggles. And D'Angelo with puck decisions is amazing. Like, I don't remember seeing a defenseman with the Flyers in quite some time, probably since peak Ghost. I don't even think Ghost was as good as D'Angelo is at making quick decisions and good decisions with the puck. So that's why, in theory, this pair always should have worked. Like, I know a lot of people tried to carve me for saying, well, D'Angelo had success with a Jacob Slavin, and Provorov is kind of like a poor man's version of a Jacob Slavin, so it should find some level of a success. But obviously, a lot of people have been down on Provorov for well over a year now and didn't want to believe it. And obviously, kind of like the personal baggage that came with D'Angelo, it seemed like this pairing was behind the 8 ball in the thoughts of fans and some pundits from the onset. But if you looked at it on paper, you looked at the analytics, you looked at the pros and cons of each player, there was no really reason to doubt why this pair would, have some level of success.
Yeah, and D'Angelo's defended better than I thought he would too. He's got a really good stick.
Did you see that play on the power play?
Yes.
Where they went, I was just like, that looked too easy for this guy.
Yeah, he's got a really good stick, and I like the intensity that he plays with. And Provorov is more under control and reserved looking on the ice, and Tony's a little more frenetic, if you will.
Yeah,
and that kind of dichotomy can work as well for them. So we'll see where it goes. I mean, you're going to have some tough
He's played a
opponents.
lot on the P. Sorry to cut you off, but he's played a lot shorthanded as well, D'Angelo.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, I mean, we're seeing guys kill penalties that we never would have thought would be killing penalties, like TK as well, despite the fact that he didn't last night in the third period. That's for sure. So this week coming up, Ant, they have Florida on Thursday. So a couple of days off. They'll have practice tomorrow and Wednesday. Then they'll get Florida at home on Thursday, trying to avenge that loss last Wednesday, 4-3 against the Panthers. And then Saturday, they'll wrap up the month of October with Carolina, and then a three-game roadie where they'll go see the Rangers and Toronto back to back.
That's going to be tough.
Yeah, that's not easy because you got customs you got to clear as well after the Ranger game coming from New York to Toronto. And then you get your first matchup against your former captain since he left here. They never played Florida after he left last year. So they'll see Ottawa on the 5th. And it's also another, what is that? 3 games in 5 nights, all on the road, including a trip to north of the border. Not going to be easy.
And look, Torts was saying that they have more back-to-backs to come here, and you have a couple of tough
3 in November.
Yeah, and this isn't a back-to-back against the San Jose Sharks. This is back-to-back against good teams, And I really think that we're going to see what this team is made of. And look, again, this isn't about them coming in and winning games, but it's about them coming in and competing. Like against Florida. I think Florida was a good example of a tough back-to-back where you hung with a team and, you did get good goaltending for most of it, but then Sandstrom led in a muffin. And maybe if you had Sandstrom make that one last save, at least you get a point out of that because TK did score with a second left.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's about really just establishing a way that you can get up and, just play hard in these back-to-backs. And look, this is not to say that they have to come out with a winning record, but you want to see how they really react to back-to-backs, especially when you're traveling across the border and against good teams, right? Like a back-to-back on the road when you have to come into Canada. Luckily, all the travel restrictions are done now, so you take that one variable out of it. But I think that's why Tortorella sent that message yesterday because, it's a back-to-back. Yeah, you got in at 3 a.m. Yeah, you had to change time zones and all that, but it's not nearly as hard as the other ones are going to be coming up in the next month or so.
When they get Toronto on that back-to-back on November 2nd, Rangers on November 1st, Toronto on November 2nd, Toronto will have just returned home from a 5-game road trip where they've already played Winnipeg. They see Vegas, San Jose, the Kings, and then Anaheim. But they'll be done with that Anaheim game on Sunday the 30th, and they don't play the Flyers until Wednesday. So they'll have plenty of time to decompress from that road trip while the Flyers have a Metro Division matchup the night before against the Rangers, and then Toronto the next night with a couple of days rest after a 5-game West Coast trip. So after that Ottawa game, you get St. Louis at home, then Columbus on the road, and then Giroux will come to Wells Fargo Center on the 12th for the first time as a member of the Senators. So that's one to circle on the calendar as well.
December 12th?
Yep. December 12th. They have back-to-back home games that weekend.
That's going to be a hell of a game, eh? How do you think the reaction is going to be?
I think he's going to get a great reaction. Oscar got a great reaction last night, deservedly so, and I think Giroux's going to get a huge one.
What do you think of Oscar's game?
He didn't do a whole lot in the game for me. But, I mean, he's battling to stay in the NHL. Go on him. He's such a good guy,
Yeah.
And I mean, based on the surgery that he had and what he had to deal with the Ewing sarcoma and everything, I don't think he's ever going to get back to the player he was prior to that. I just don't think it's possible.
You feel for the guy, and I'm happy that San Jose gave him a shot. But I mean, it really is just, it's tough to see how he sticks as a regular in the NHL, especially on a good team. Like maybe he'll always have a job with a San Jose, that type of situation. But it is sad to see because you think back to 2019-20, how good he looked with Konechny and Couturier. But
yeah. So it'll be interesting coming up. We'll see what takes place. Let's wrap it up there. And anything special you're working on for the fourth period?
Yeah, well, like I have some interviews lined up with some executives, hoping to get someone from an Eastern Conference team. I did a feature on the Coyotes a few weeks ago. I did one on Craig Conroy and the Calgary Flames a few weeks ago, trying to some rumor pieces in there as well. But obviously, at this time of the year, there's not a whole lot to talk about. But we'll see where it goes.
We'll have to get Pagnotta to join us sometime here soon as well. Check
Yeah,
in
if you can
He's been on
find.
the show before.
Yeah, if you can find the guy, he's always traveling, man. I can't even keep tabs on him.
It's like, where's Dave Pagnotta in the world today? Great stuff. Check out stuff on thefourthperiod.com and at a DiMarco 25.
You got it.
Nailing it lately. I'm on fire lately. And thanks, man. We'll talk soon, brother.
Thanks, man. Take it easy.
There he is, Anthony DiMarco from thefourthperiod.com. Great stuff as always. Plenty to talk about. Plenty to talk about on Wednesday as well. By the way, on Wednesday's episode, my good buddy Kevin Woodley is going to join us from In-Goal Magazine, the In-Goal Radio podcast. He is the goalie guru for Sportsnet, and he is fantastic. And we're going to talk about Carter, talk about goaltending, and all kinds of different things. You know, the formula for why goalies start off a year good, why goalies struggle in certain situations. And Woody's always got great information. So Kevin Woodley will join us coming up on Wednesday's episode. Still trying to procure our guest for Friday's episode, but we'll let you know what that is on Wednesday. I should have that done by then. So, Woody will be on Wednesday's episode, and everybody really enjoys when he comes on. So looking forward to that as well. Flyers are off until Thursday night against the Florida Panthers. So we'll have some interesting storylines to develop with the Hayes and Konechny benching in the third, and we'll stay on top of all of it right here on BetParks Presents Stick to Hockey Live. Get the BetParks app. It's a great time to get it because you've got the football season, college and pro in full swing. You've got the final series in baseball set to take place with the Fightins in it as well. And also, obviously, hockey season, hoops is here. You got so much to get your action in on F1. And take it from me, the BetParks app is fantastic. It's easy to use, easy to navigate, faster to win than ever before. Check out the hockey bonus and that we're going to do, the boost, coming up on Wednesday. And we'll give you all the info on that on Wednesday as well. Both have hit so far, so we're 2-0. And player performances, same game parlays, live in-game betting, it's all there for you. First to score, exact score, you name it, over-unders, all on the BetParks app. So download the BetParks app today. You need to be over 21 and present in Pennsylvania or New Jersey. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. And also stop by Route 202 in Glen Mills to the new Conquerville Subaru dealership. Fantastic dealership. They continue to do great work in the community. Beautiful showroom. And you can check out all the certified pre-owned inventory, list of incoming Subaru vehicles. And it's a great, not just a great dealership, but a great service department with a free car wash with every visit. Visit ConquervilleSubaru.com and check out the showroom on Route 202 in Glen Mills. And remember, Conquerville cares. All right, we'll be back Wednesday. Another brand new episode of BetParks Presents Stick to Hockey Live. Everybody, hang tight. We'll talk to you in a couple of days. Thanks for listening. Leave us a 5-star rating and review. Subscribe on YouTube and much more. And we'll talk to you Wednesday on a brand new BetParks Presents Stick to Hockey Live.